Welcome to the Witchy Work Wishes podcast, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. Last week, we spent some time getting to know the wolf. We explored the real wolf, the mythology, the folklore, the magic. We explored the lessons of intuition, boundaries, community, leadership, and balance. But throughout that entire episode, there was a message waiting for us. Turn knowledge into wisdom. Welcome back to Witchy Work Wishes and to part 2 of the Wolves and Witchcraft series. So that's it. That was the message Wolf Spirit brought when she arrived for us this month. And it's an important one. It really is an important lesson for us to learn, not only as witches, but also as business owners and spiritual seekers. Really, simply as human beings. Because we live in a world overflowing with information. We can Google just about anything. We have chat now. We can watch endless videos, read endless books, take endless classes. We can listen to podcast after podcast after podcast. And yet wisdom just feels surprisingly rare, doesn't it? Why is that? How can that even be? With everything at our fingertips, how can that be? Because knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. Knowledge is learning something. Wisdom is living it. For my fellow Gen Xers, we would probably call this street smart. And there really is a very big difference between the two. The enchanted forest, I keep returning to the words Colette Baron Reed used when describing wolf spirit. She writes that the wolf spirit leads us into the enchanted forest that holds the secrets to our lives. I love that image. I absolutely love it, because I don't think the forest is just a physical place. I think the forest also represents the deeper places within ourselves, the places where life lessons live, the place where healing happens, where we stop collecting information and start transforming it. The forest is where knowledge becomes wisdom. So we are diving in today. We are going deep into the enchanted forest together to learn how to turn knowledge into wisdom. Before we jump into today's episode, I have to tell you about Ragnar. And I know today's all about the wolf, but we have another spirit that might not be part of an oracle card draw, but it is definitely chirping in my ear. Ragnar, my 4-year-old fluffy white and orange cat, has decided that my nighttime sleep schedule is no longer important. He loves the bedtime routines. He is a spooner. He snuggles up with me every single night. But the actual sleep part of it, well, it is being challenged. Every once in a while, in the middle of the night, I suddenly wake up because Ragnar has proudly delivered me a live cricket right onto the bed. Not a toy, not a leaf. This is a live cricket. So there I am, half asleep, climbing out of bed, finding a drinking glass, gently catching this little cricket, walking it outside, and releasing it into the yard. And then, of course, crawling back into bed while Ragnar just seems to be watching the whole thing, like he's just completed a very important mission. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you know exactly where my mind goes. I started wondering, is there something symbolic about this? I mean, once or twice, okay, right? It's just Ragnar. But over and over and over again, night after night? Like, okay, stop, right? I hear you. Let's figure this out. Now, crickets have long been considered symbols of good fortune, intuition, and, those quiet kind of messages. Because they're most active at night, they tend to remind us that some of the lessons arrive when, everything else has become still. They ask us to slow down, listen carefully, and pay attention to the little things that are sometimes easy to overlook. And we usually hear a cricket long before we ever see it. So maybe the message is something about asking me to become a better listener. Messages do often arrive before the opportunity becomes visible. Small things matter. That could be part of it too, right? A cricket is tiny, easy to overlook. Yet one little cricket can, case in point, wake up an entire household. Spiritually, that could be a nice little reminder that the smallest habits and conversations or decisions often create the biggest changes over time. I don't know. I'm not sure what is resonating yet. Honestly, there's also a home and hearth connection too. Right across many cultures, a cricket living near the home has traditionally been viewed as a sign of blessing and protection and prosperity. A place having a peaceful household, it's almost like the guardian of the home. Anyways, you guys, it's been going on for a while now, and it's not every night, but I don't know, out of 7 days a week, it's at least one. I would love to actually tag this little cricket in some way just to see if it's actually the same cricket that Ragnar brings each night. I don't know. Oh, you know what? It could also be something with nighttime awareness. Crickets become active while much of the world is asleep. Now, that connects them with intuition and dreams and inner knowing, maybe. I don't know. Next time I need to stop and be aware of the dream I'm having right when it happens. That could definitely be part of it too. Ragnar waking me up on purpose to notice the dream. Again, pay attention when life grows quiet. I don't know, maybe that does tie into our wolf theme for July, turning knowledge into wisdom. And then there's Ragnar, right? Cats notice things we don't. They're observant, curious, very protective of their homes. Whether Ragnar simply thinks he's bringing me the world's greatest midnight gift, or, I don't know, maybe the universe has a sense of humor, I can't help but smile at the message. Maybe wisdom doesn't always arrive through dramatic moments and oracle card draws. Maybe it arrives one tiny cricket at a time. I don't know, maybe that is exactly what the wolf is trying to teach us this month. Knowledge isn't usually one big breakthrough. It's a collection of little moments, little observations, little choices that eventually become wisdom. Needless to say, I will continue to rescue the crickets, and Ragnar will probably continue bringing me them. I suppose we are all doing our part. I don't know if I shared my Ragnar story with you guys. I mean, I know you know him. I talk about him. He's in the videos at Hearth and Hen. But have I ever shared the story of Ragnar coming into my life? I know we've talked about familiars and witch allies before, and I thought about Ragnar's place in my life quite a bit. I do not think he is a familiar. I mean, we are incredibly close. He is bonded to me, and I'll tell you the story of how we found each other in just a minute. But I don't believe he is my familiar. I have had the amazing experience of a familiar with a crow for about 3 years. And overall, I do think crows and ravens communicate with me and guide me and provide lessons and information. But for Ragnar, I think he is a trusted ally. For me, a familiar is something, much more specific. Our ancestors described familiars as spiritual companions that assist a witch in magical work. Depending on the tradition, they may be understood as a spirit taking the form of an animal, a spiritual helper, or an animal that shares an unusually deep magical partnership with a witch. Not every beloved pet is a familiar, and I do think that is an important distinction. And of course, that does not make our relationship with our animals any less meaningful. I think many of us are blessed with what I like to call witch allies. These are the animals who somehow find their way into our lives, teach us lessons, comfort us, make us laugh, and just walk beside us through different seasons of our journey. They may not be familiars in, like the traditional sense, but they become trusted companions all the same. For me, that's Ragnar. He is my shadow around the house, my morning coffee companion, my nighttime cricket delivery service, apparently, and one of my greatest teachers in patience, curiosity, and unconditional companionship. Whatever title we give these relationships, I think the lesson is pretty much the same. Animals have an incredible way of helping us notice the magic that's already all around us, if we are willing to pay attention. Now, Ragnar came into my life at a very specific time. In 2021, I had one of my hardest years ever. I was torn down, I was defeated, and at the end of the year, I reached a point where I honestly did not know what the next chapter of my life was going to look like. I am still amazed I got through that December. Barely. But in January of 2022, a light started shining at the end of the tunnel, and I was given a glimmer of hope. That January, in a parked car in a courthouse parking lot, I waited before heading into a hearing. I know I've told you guys this before, but a crow came to me and sat on the fence right in front of me. Like right in front of me. There was no doubt, zero doubt, that he was there for me. I locked eyes with him and we just sat there for a bit. I burst into tears and I said, "Thank you." I knew from that moment on, everything was going to be okay. There were no words, there was no sound, but the message was clear. To my core, I knew he was saying, everything is going to be okay. And in February, life started changing and looking hopeful again. At the end of March, I got a phone call from the Humane Society that I happened to foster for that a tiny kitten needed help. And not just any help, my help. In a city nearby, a pregnant mom cat had given birth to a litter of kittens in someone's yard. The owner of the home and yard did not know what happened, and this was not their cat. They did not own a cat. They owned a dog. And like any dog-owning family, just like I would have done, they opened the back door so their dog could go out. The little newborn, hour-old kittens were attacked by the dog. All were killed except for one. The owners of the home and dog were so upset. They tried saving the kittens, but their efforts were lost. All were gone but one. One who was fighting to stay alive. Now, the Humane Society got him, still just hours old. He had 2 big puncture wounds on his head that looked terminal. In most cases, I would assume the right thing to do would be to end all suffering. That is the compassionate thing to do. But this little fighter was responding to the little bottle, and he was nursing. And just like me a month earlier, there was hope. I got the call and I rushed over. I packed him up, got some extra formula, and started the journey with him. A heating blanket was positioned just perfectly in a small, tiny carrier, and he was surrounded by fluffy, warm blankets. My alarm was set. Every 1.5 hours, I would feed him and tend to his wounds. And if you've ever been a foster parent for a bottle baby animal, feeding is around the clock. Every 1.5 hours, I fed him throughout the day and throughout the night. Day after day, he got stronger, and day after day, his wounds got better. There was only one name fitting for this little fighter, Ragnar Lothbrok. Everywhere I went, Ragnar went. No matter where I was, so was he. Soon he was eating every 3 hours, and I was sleeping a little bit more through the night. It was not long before he took his first steps and started playing with toys. And believe it or not, at the big marker of 8 weeks, Ragnar was 2 pounds and ready to be adopted by his forever family. Well, I mean, that's what's supposed to happen when you foster. The goal is to save lives, create and nurture healthy animals that can either be released back into the wild if you're fostering wildlife, or find their forever homes and be adopted by a family. But when the time came and Ragnar was to go to the shelter to start this process, I, of course, broke down into tears. I struggled with the emotions and I wrestled with my heart. And mind you, this happens with all fosters. Like, it is super hard to say goodbye after 2 months of intense bottle feeding, no sleep, lots of love and care and protection. But back to the shelter, this 2-month-ish mile marker is what is supposed to happen. No. No, 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 no. Ragnar would not be leaving my home. My little Aries fighter would be with me for the rest of his life. And I did not have to fight with my emotions too long to realize that. I chose to move forward and past the pain in the previous year and months. And here I was given a little fighter doing the exact same thing. There's no coincidence of Ragnar coming into my life. None. He was meant to. And he and I are bonded for a reason. I do have a video of him. I think it's a little over a minute. I'll share it over on our video side of Witchy Work Wishes in Hearth and Hen. But trigger warning. You do see his injuries when he is a day old. You see the head wounds. But if you can, stay with the video because at the end you see a healthy, big, fluffy, almost 1-year-old who fought to live. Now, Ragnar, he's not my familiar. But I do think he is an ally. There are my crows. Hello. I do think he's an ally. I am grateful, like so grateful he is a part of my life and home and practice. Looking back now, I do not think Ragnar came into my life because I needed to save him. I think we saved each other on some level. He reminded me that healing doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes it happens every hour and a half. One bottle, One night's sleep, one tiny step, one hopeful day after another. And maybe that's why he still wakes me up with crickets in the middle of the night. He is still teaching me to pay attention, still reminding me that life has a funny little way of placing exactly what we need in our path, often long before we understand why. And since I'm getting all personal here and sharing this journey with you, I should probably tell you why the wolf spirit, I think, came forward in the first place. I know exactly why it showed up, and I have a feeling many of you have experienced something similar. You know how we all have like those decks, right? We may own several, but there are one or two that simply become our decks. Ones we trust completely, ones that somehow seem to know exactly what we need before we even do. For me, it's my Animal Oracle deck and my Crow Tarot deck. I have others that I enjoy working with, but these two I trust to my core. Over the past year, I've shared my own journey, a personal journey with all of you. This has been my year of asking a different question. Not what do I want to accomplish, but how do I want to feel? As we are reaching here, the halfway point, I naturally am finding myself doing a little life review. You know, that mid-year check-in where we ask ourselves, how am I doing? What's working? What needs to change? And just where do I want to go from here? But that's when I realized something. I felt stuck. Not because I didn't have enough information, not because I didn't have enough experience. Actually, it was the opposite. I've spent years learning and reading and studying, healing and trying to understand my own journey. I don't know everything, like far from it, right? But I've got knowledge. And for the first time, knowledge just didn't feel like enough anymore. There was this longing inside of me, almost a question, just now what? What do I do with everything I've learned? How do I stop collecting wisdom and start living it? So I shuffled my deck as I normally do for us in our monthly workings, and I asked for our animal guide for July. The card that appeared was the wolf. Its message could not have been more direct. Turn knowledge into wisdom. I had to laugh, right? You have to laugh when you turn that card over because it just feels like one of those moments where spirit gently smiles and says, yeah, that's it. Exactly. That's the lesson. That single card does not answer all of my questions, but it gives me a direction. It gives us a direction. It is inviting us to spend the month walking beside Wolf, learning from Wolf, and exploring what it really means to transform knowledge into something we actually live every day. I think that's a journey many of us are on together. So last week we explored wolves through the lens of witchcraft a little bit. Before we could understand the symbolism, we first needed to understand the animal itself. We talked about how wolves actually live, the strength of their pack, their intelligence, loyalty, communication, and also the lessons we can learn simply by observing nature. This week, I'd just love to take the next step. Now that we know the wolf, let's explore the wisdom. Let's step into the mythology, folklore, and spiritual lessons and the practical ways we can begin working with wolf's energy in our own lives. Because we know, right? This really isn't a story about wolves. We learned this last week. It never really is. It's a story about us, about becoming the people that we were meant to be. So get cozy, get comfortable, pour yourself a big glass of lemonade or maybe a tall glass of iced tea. Settle into your favorite chair and join me for the next little bit. Whether you're listening on your morning walk, driving to work, or I don't know, maybe simply enjoying a quiet moment to yourself, I am so grateful you're here. Let's continue our journey with the wolf and jump into our second part of wolves and witchcraft. Do you remember when you were a kid and you thought wisdom belonged to old people? I certainly did. I imagined there would come a day when someone would hand me the answers. That one day I'd wake up and magically know what I was doing and just suddenly feel like a real grown up who had life all figured out. But something funny happens. We become the adult, and somehow we're still waiting. We're still wondering if we're making the right decisions. still hoping someone wiser might appear around the next corner with all the answers that we've been looking for. And I would like to challenge that idea today. I think the wolf is the perfect guide to help us do it. So today, let's begin where Wolf has always lived, at the edge of the enchanted forest. And yes, I am absolutely picturing a forest made of towering pines and winding trails. But I am also envisioning the enchanted forest within ourselves, a place where every experience we've ever lived still exists. Our victories, our mistakes, our heartbreaks and our healing, our joy, grief, courage, and resilience. Every lesson we've ever learned is waiting for us there. The question isn't whether we've gained enough knowledge. We know what happened. We were there. We experienced it. We lived through our lessons. The question is, have we allowed those experiences and knowledge to become wisdom? Have you ever noticed how often witches, folklore, fairy tales, and mythology all lead us into an enchanted forest? I don't think that's an accident. Forests have always represented something much deeper than a collection of trees. They're places where we leave the familiar behind. When you step into a forest, the noise of the world begins to fade. The path is not always straight. You can't always see what's around the next bend. You have to slow down. You just have to pay attention. You also have to trust your instincts. And in many ways, that's exactly what a spiritual journey feels like, I think. The enchanted forest isn't really a place outside of ourselves. It's the landscape of our own lives. It's where all of our memories live, our unanswered questions. It's where we meet the parts of ourselves that we've forgotten, the lessons we haven't fully understood, and sometimes the wisdom we've been carrying all along. I think that's why witches are often drawn to forests. Not because magic only exists there, but because the forest reminds us how to hear the magic that's been waiting inside us all along. When we enter the enchanted forest in mythology, the hero or heroine never leaves as the same person. They encounter guides, of course, right? They encounter challenges, unexpected gifts, and moments that change them forever. They don't enter the forest because they already have the answers. They enter because they are willing to begin the journey. Most all of our stories have a very, very common theme. There are 3 stages to every tale. The village. This is where everything is familiar and comfortable. The forest, where transformation happens. And the return home, where the hero comes back changed. But guess what? That's the structure of almost every spiritual journey, too, right? This is the journey the wolf walks us on. And maybe that's why wolves live there. Not in the safety of the village where everything is familiar, not at the finish line where every lesson has already been learned. The wolf spirit waits at the edge of the forest, patiently, quietly, just inviting us to step beyond what we already know and trust. Like trust that every experience along the path is shaping us into the person that we are meant to be. So, you know what? Maybe the enchanted forest isn't asking us to find something we've lost. Maybe it's inviting us to remember what we've always carried within us. Wisdom might not be waiting at the end of the trail. It really is found and created with every step we take through the forest. All right, let's just start with the village, right? Where knowledge begins. We all know the village, don't we? This is a place where life feels familiar, where routines exist, where we know the rules. People know our names in the village, and we feel safe, for the most part. Not because life is perfect or good or bad, because it's predictable. It's that kind of safe. I'm guessing on our spiritual path, village is our early life. You know, our education and family, our traditions and beliefs, our religion and our first magical experiences. It is where we have the books we read, the teachers we admire, and the people we trust. The village is where knowledge begins. A village isn't wrong or bad, it's just how things start. The village gives us language and community. It gives us our first stories and a place to begin. Without the village, there is no journey. The village teaches knowledge. This is key, right? Knowledge is collected here. Books, classes, podcasts, courses. certifications, conversations, teachers we love, teachers we don't. Knowledge is beautiful and necessary and sacred, but knowledge is not the destination. I would love to know, like, where is your village? What has it taught you? Who were your first teachers? What beliefs still serve you today? What beliefs have you outgrown? Now, if we go back to our 3 steps of every fairy tale, every hero eventually hears something. A whisper, a calling, a question, an invitation maybe, and not because the village failed them, because they have learned everything the village can teach. And then the enchanted forest calls them. Okay, the enchanted forest. This is where transformation happens. The enchanted forest is where everything begins to change. Not because we've suddenly become wiser, not because we finally have all the answers, but because life starts asking us different questions. I think this is where the path becomes much less predictable. We can't always see what's waiting around the next bend. Sometimes the trail feels clear and beautiful. Sometimes we feel completely lost. But we keep walking. The enchanted forest is where experience begins to shape us. This is where we experience our greatest joys. It's where we fall in love and build careers. It's where we raise children. It's where we make mistakes. It's where we lose people we love, where we discover strengths we never knew we had. The enchanted forest is where life gently, and sometimes not so gently, teaches us lessons that no book ever could. And I think witches have always been drawn to the enchanted forest because it's one of the great spiritual symbols that we have. Again, the forest isn't just a place filled with trees, right? It is a place of transformation. When we walk into a forest, we naturally slow down, right? We begin paying attention. We listen differently. We notice things we might otherwise overlook. Kind of like, or I don't know, exactly like what happens on our spiritual journey. The enchanted forest isn't really outside of us. It's within us. It's the place where our memories live. Every lesson we've ever lived becomes another tree growing in that forest. This is also where we meet our guides. Sometimes that guide is a person. Sometimes it's a season of life. Sometimes it's a frickin' challenge we never asked for. It's sometimes, I don't know, it's a wolf waiting patiently along the trail. Not because the wolf has come to rescue us, but because the wolf knows something we don't yet fully understand. Again, the forest isn't something to fear, right? It really is where wisdom is born. Knowledge can tell us which direction to walk. Experience teaches us why the journey matters. And every step that we take through the forest changes us just a little bit. Maybe that's why the enchanted forest appears in so many fairy tales. The hero never enters the forest because everything is easy. They enter because something inside of them knows it's time. Time to grow, time to trust, time to become. And if you are like me, it is where many of us find ourselves today, standing at the edge of the forest, taking one deep breath and deciding to take the next step anyway. All right. Third is the return home, where the wisdom lives. Because eventually every great story brings the hero home. Not because the journey is over, but because they have become someone new. That's really the beautiful thing about the hero's journey, isn't it? The village hasn't changed. The roads are still the same. The houses, the people are the same. Home is the same. The only thing that's different is the person who has returned. Now, you and I have spent years learning. Even if you're not my age, I know you have. You have been reading books, listening to podcasts, taking those classes. You have been building your career, maybe raising families, experiencing heartbreak and finding healing. You have had to start over too. Maybe, like me, more than once. And somewhere along the way, we stopped being the student who was simply collecting knowledge. We became the person living it. And I think that's one of the hardest things for me to recognize. I guess it's easy to keep searching for another teacher, another book, another certification, another answer, as if someone else is finally going to hand us the wisdom we've been looking for. And guess what? Spoiler alert. What if? What if the wisdom isn't waiting in the next book? What if it's already growing inside of you? What if every challenge you've survived, every mistake you've learned from, every goodbye, beginning, success, every failure, all of it? What if all of it has been shaping you into the wise adult you've been searching for all along? I know for me personally, that realization has been incredibly humbling. When I pulled the Wolf Spirit card this month and read the words, turn knowledge into wisdom, I first thought maybe Wolf was asking me to go find something. But no, it did not take long after really sinking into it that I know the wolf is asking me, asking us to recognize something, to trust the wisdom we already have earned. Not because we know everything, I certainly don't, but because life has been teaching us all along. Wisdom is not knowing all of the answers. Wisdom is learning to trust the lessons life has already given us. So today, in our journey out of the enchanted forest and back home, the questions I'm asking myself is not, what else do I need to learn? It is, what do I already know that is finally time to live? And that's an invitation for all of us. Stop standing at the edge of the forest wondering if we are ready, and instead, walk back into our lives with a little more courage, a little more confidence, a little more compassion, and a little more trust in the person that we've become. Because knowledge fills our minds, experience shapes our hearts, but wisdom is what we choose to live with every single day. Last week we talked about one of the oldest wolf stories many of us have ever heard, Little Red Riding Hood. As children, we were often told it was a story about obeying our parents or, not talking to strangers. And while those lessons certainly have value, I wonder if there is something even deeper happening beneath the surface. Think about the story for just a moment. Little Red Riding Hood begins safely in her village. She knows the rules, she knows the path, she knows exactly where she is supposed to go. Then she enters the forest. That's where everything changes. She encounters the wolf. She becomes distracted. She makes mistakes. She learns difficult lessons about trust, discernment, and paying attention. And when the story ends, she doesn't simply return home. She returns wiser. She's no longer the same little girl who first stepped into the woods. Now, I love that story, and it actually totally fits into our Wolves and Witchcraft episodes here. But today I'd like to use a different tale and story, one that almost everyone knows, The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy begins her journey in Kansas. That's her village. It is familiar, it's home. She understands the world around her, even if she's dreaming of something more. Then everything changes. A storm arrives, and not just any storm, a tornado. She is carried into an unfamiliar land and begins walking the yellow brick road. That road is her enchanted forest. Along the way, she meets companions, faces fears, overcomes challenges, and slowly discovers strengths she never knew she possessed. She spends the entire story searching for someone she believes has all the answers, the great and powerful wizard. But when she finally reaches him, she discovers something remarkable. The wizard wasn't the answer. The journey was. By the time Dorothy returns home, Kansas hasn't changed. Her aunt and uncle are the same. The farmhouse is the same, right? The fields are the same. Home is exactly as she left it. Kind of. Other than the storm that tore everything up. But you know what I mean. It's overall the same. The only thing that's different is Dorothy. She returns home with the wisdom she could never have gained if she stayed safely in the village. We have a theme, don't we? Like we're right back with it. The village, where everything is familiar and comfortable. The forest, where transformation happens. The return home, where the hero comes back changed. I think that's why these stories have endured for generations. Every fairy tale and story, for the most part, tells the same lesson. We think we're searching for something outside of ourselves. A wizard, a prince, a magical object, a guide, a map, the answer. But somewhere along the journey, we discover the greatest transformation wasn't finding something at all. It was becoming someone. I think that is exactly where the wolf is leading us. There is a reason the wolf showed up for us this month, and a reason I am now taking 2 episodes to dive into the lessons of it. The wolf wants us to turn our knowledge into wisdom. Okay, so now what? What do we do? I know we are all witches, and the name of these 2 episodes is Wolves and Witchcraft, but I just don't know if the next step is about meditating or pulling a card or, I don't know, even casting a spell. I think Wolf says, live one thing that you already know. We've said it before too. What do I already know that is finally time to live? I think that's the next step. And not homework for us, like just the next step. An invitation, really. The wolf does not ask us to find a new path. The wolf asks us to trust the path that we have already walked. And I do think that is why wolves appear so often in mythology and folklore, right? The wolf is not the destination. The wolf is the guide. Knowledge versus wisdom, right? Knowledge says, I know boundaries are important. Wisdom says, I finally started saying no. Knowledge says, I understand self-care. I know what it is. I know what to do. Wisdom says, I stopped burning myself out and I finally started giving myself self-care. Knowledge says, I know forgiveness matters. Wisdom says, I did the hard work of letting go. Knowledge fills the mind and wisdom changes the life. As I was thinking about all of this, I was reminded of an idea I came across in a book called The Habit Flip, or it might just be Habit Flip. It's by R.L. Adams. One of the concepts that really stayed with me after reading it is that lasting change often comes more easily when we focus on adding a healthy habit rather than trying to force ourselves to eliminate a bad one. I really like that idea. And I'm personally going to be pulling from this on my next step process. So often we spend our energy saying, I need to stop doing this, right? Or I have to quit that. But what if the better question is, what can I begin? Instead of trying to stop worrying, maybe we begin taking a 10-minute walk each morning. Instead of trying to stop people pleasing, maybe we begin practicing one healthy boundary each week. Instead of trying to stop feeling disconnected, maybe we begin spending a few quiet moments in nature every day. Little by little, those new healthy habits begin to grow, and something beautiful happens. The healthy habits slowly crowd out the old, unwanted ones. Not because we fought harder, not because we, white knuckled it, because we nourished something better. It has to get us close, doesn't it? That's got to be kind of how wisdom works. Knowledge is learning what we should do. When we know what to do, we are smart people. But knowing and doing are 2 very different things. And that's where I have felt stuck. Knowledge and wisdom are 2 different things. Wisdom is choosing one small thing and doing it consistently. And I'm not saying perfectly, I'm saying consistently. Maybe that's why Wolf doesn't ask us to leap across the entire forest in a single bound. Wolf simply takes the next step, then another, and another. Until one day, without even realizing it, the path behind us tells the story of who we've become. We have taken the lesson, and yes, maybe we've had to experience them more than once, but we've taken them. And we are taking that knowledge and turning it into wisdom by applying the knowledge into our everyday lives. Let's look at 3 examples. One for self-care, one for boundaries, and one for trusting ourselves. Self-care, the village. The village teaches us that self-care is important. We read books about it. We hear podcasts discussing it. Our friends tell us we need more of it. We even know exactly what we should be doing. We know we need more sleep, better food, more movement, more time outside, and a little less stress. That is knowledge. It is important. This is where the journey begins, in the village. Then life happens, and we enter the enchanted forest. We're busy. We are raising families, building businesses. We are caring for aging parents. We are managing homes and trying to keep everything moving. The forest is where we discover that knowing something and living something are 2 very, very different things. Maybe we begin with one small habit, a 10-minute walk each morning, a cup of tea before opening email, maybe going to bed 30 minutes earlier. Maybe we are taking 5 quiet minutes before the house wakes up. Those are good. Those are small choices, and they maybe don't seem like much in the beginning, but every day we repeat them, they become another step along the trail. Then, one day, something changes. We return home. Self-care is no longer another item on our to-do list. It's simply a part of who we are. We no longer exercise because someone told us we should. We move our bodies because we've experienced how much better we feel when we do. We don't spend time in nature because a book suggested it. We do it because we've learned that our spirit needs it. The knowledge didn't change us. Living it did. That's wisdom. And that's what Wolf is inviting us to do. All right. Second example, healthy boundaries. The village. The village teaches us what boundaries are. We read about them. We hear therapists, authors, and friends talk about how important they are. We understand that boundaries protect our time, our energy, our peace, and our relationships. We nod our heads and think, and that tracks. That makes sense. Well, that's knowledge, and it's a wonderful place to begin. Then we walk into the enchanted forests. Life invites us into the beautiful enchanted forest. Someone asks for more than we can give. A client crosses a line. A family member expects too much. We say yes when every part of us wants to say no. We've all been there. The forest is where we begin practicing boundaries, one conversation at a time. Maybe we don't get it right the first time. I rarely do. Maybe our voice shakes. Maybe we feel guilty. Maybe we replay the conversation in our heads all day, wondering if we did the right thing. Been there, done that. But each time we choose to honor ourselves with kindness and honesty, we are taking another step through the forest. We're learning, we're adjusting, right? We're making notes. What worked, what didn't. And those are not just notes from a book. These are our life experience notes. Then, one day, without noticing, something changes, and we return home. We no longer create boundaries because someone told us we should. We create them because we've experienced the peace they bring. We understand that saying no to one thing often means saying yes to something more important. We realize that healthy boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're gates, really. They just help care for what matters most. The knowledge taught us what boundaries were. The village was needed. Experience taught us why they matter. We had to walk through the forest. And wisdom allows us to create them with confidence, compassion, and love. That's the journey the wolf invites us to take. Not becoming harder, simply becoming truer to ourselves. Trusting yourself, the third example, probably the most important of all, because if you actually start with this one, everything else will just follow in place, or maybe fall into place as it should. Learning to trust ourselves. Well, the village teaches us to look for answers. We ask our parents, our teachers, and our mentors. We read books and listen to podcasts. We seek advice from people we admire. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, it really is one of the best ways to begin learning. The village reminds us that knowledge can be shared. But eventually, there comes a moment where we have to make the decision ourselves. The forest is where we begin trusting our own voice, our beautiful and amazing enchanted forest. It might feel foreign or a little scary at first. Maybe it's accepting a new job, starting a business, leaving an unhealthy relationship. Maybe it is moving to a new town or beginning a new spiritual practice. It might be choosing forgiveness and healing and hope. No one else can make those decisions for us. We gather advice, we listen with an open heart, but eventually there comes a moment when we have to stop asking everyone else what they think and ask ourselves. I think that first decision can feel uncomfortable. We second guess ourselves, don't we? We wonder if we are making a mistake. But each time we choose to trust our own inner wisdom, our confidence grows a little stronger. Until one day, we realize something beautiful and we return home. We still appreciate books. We still value teachers. We still welcome wise advice. But we no longer believe someone else knows our path better than we do. We've learned to recognize the quiet little voice within ourselves, not because it's always the loudest, but because it's the one that's been walking beside us all along. That's wisdom. It's not about having all the answers. It's about trusting yourself enough to take the next step, even when you can't see the entire path ahead. There is our wolf again, right? And one of the greatest gifts the wolf leaves us with, not certainty, trust. The quiet confidence to believe that everything we've experienced has, in fact, prepared us for whatever comes next. Well, I'll speak for myself on this one. I do think, though, many of us spend years collecting knowledge while waiting for wisdom to somehow just arrive on its own. But wisdom requires experience. Wisdom requires practice and application. Lessons that keep returning. You know them, don't you? One of the things I've noticed throughout my life is that lessons tend to repeat themselves. The same patterns, the same frustrations, the same relationships, the same fears, the same opportunities. They just keep circling around on repeat until we finally understand what they came to teach us. I sometimes think life is remarkably patient. The lesson will keep arriving until we are ready to learn it. Not because we are failing, but, gosh, growth just takes time. It does. Maybe wisdom is not about learning new lessons. It's about finally understanding the lessons we have already been given. One of my favorite lines from Reed's description of the wolf spirit is, "Turn experience into magic." And maybe this speaks to you as well. I think that may be the heart of witchcraft itself, overall, because magic is not simply what happens during ritual. Magic is what happens when transformation occurs, when grief becomes compassion and our struggles become resilience, when fear becomes courage and experience becomes understanding. Every challenge we survive leaves us with something valuable. We, of course, may not see it right away, but it's there. It waits there for us to grasp when, we are ready. Every season teaches us something. Every ending, every beginning teaches us something. Part of the magic is recognizing the lesson. Reed also says, "You are the one you have been waiting for." It is super easy for us to spend years searching outside of ourselves. The next teacher, the next course and book and certification, all the stuff we've been talking about today, the next answer. And there's nothing wrong with learning. But eventually there does come a moment when we just have to trust ourselves. Again, not because we know everything, but because we know enough to take the next step. The wolf is asking us, what do you already know? What lesson have you already learned? What wisdom are you refusing to claim? The wolf did not come to teach us anything new here today, this month. The wolf came right now, right on cue, to remind us of what we already know. The wisdom is already there. The lessons and experiences are already here. The question is whether we are willing to trust them. So follow the wolf spirit into the enchanted forest, not to find new answers, but to discover that the answers have been walking beside us all along. Well, let's see. Before we wrap up today, you've probably already noticed this episode feels a little different than some of our others. I did not spend a lot of time talking about spells and correspondences or magical tools. We kind of skipped our usual business witch section this week too. That's not by accident. Sometimes it is not about learning a new ritual or collecting another correspondence. Sometimes, with the wolf's advice here, the magic is slowing down long enough to recognize how much we have already grown. And hopefully, today's episode was all about that. About wisdom and noticing the journey that we've already walked and truly trusting the person that we are becoming. Really, today, we explored the roots from which all of our magical practices grow from. Now, if you're thinking, okay, Charlene, I still want all the witchy stuff. Yeah, I gotcha. Don't worry. This month, I've actually put together one of my biggest Patreon collections that I've actually created, and it's all around the wolf spirit. I'm exploring the wolf mythology, correspondences, herbs, crystals, magical practices, a custom sigil, of course, spells, journal work, tea rituals, signs that the wolf may be walking beside you, and a bunch more. I've also created an entirely new monthly business witch practice where we take these same wolf lessons and apply them to our work, leadership, businesses and really our everyday corporate lives. So I get ya. I want to get witchy too. Today was just a little bit of a different feeling, so I don't know. I just went with it. But if the worksheet spells and grimoire sound like something you want to dive into, if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, I'd absolutely love, love, love to have you join us. You can find everything over at witchyworkwishes.com and our Patreon family. For today, though, I don't know. I just simply wanted us to spend a little time walking through the forest together because that is what friends do, right? That is how we support each other in our magical family. And you know what? I don't have a poem. Normally we would finish with our moon update, a little rhyme and our usual closing rhythm. Today just feels different. I think this is one of those conversations that just needs a little room to breathe, a little room to settle. And honestly, I'm just kind of letting it all marinate myself. When I first pulled the wolf spirit card, oracle card, I thought this was going to be an episode all about wolves. Instead, it became an episode about us. Last week told me as much. The signs were there, right? All the stories about werewolves and wolves and mythology, they gave us the signs. The stories never really are about the wolves themselves. They are about the journeys that we've walked, the lessons we've lived, the wisdom we've quietly earned without always recognizing it. One of the reasons I love Colette Baron-Reid's work so much is that she describes wolf spirit as the guide who leads us into the enchanted forest, the forest that holds the secrets of our lives, the place where our life lessons live, the place where healing happens, the place where we stop collecting information and begin transforming it. The forest is where knowledge becomes wisdom, and I think that's exactly where we walked today. So this week, don't worry about changing your whole life. Don't feel like you need to have all of the answers. Just take the next step. One conversation, one healthy boundary, one quiet moment, one act of kindness towards yourself. One choice maybe that reflects the person that you are becoming. Because wisdom is not something we discover all at once. It's something we practice one step at a time. Now, I do have a birthday weekend coming up, and I'm doing my big annual circle ritual with it, which, guess what, happens to be our theme for next week. Next week is all about casting a witch's circle, and I am super excited to be sharing it with you. I'm still working on my notes for it, but by next week, I will be all ready to go. Thank you for walking beside the wolf with me today. Thank you for walking beside me. I hope the rest of your week is just amazing, and you have a beautiful weekend. I will talk with you next week. Thank you for joining me today at Witchy Work Wishes, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. For more information and additional content, please visit me online at witchyworkwishes.com. If you want to send me a personal note, please email me at info@witchyworkwishes.com. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Witchy Work Wishes.